Hello and welcome everybody to Brand-Funded Entertainment. Is this the next generation of TV? I think we've asked this question many times over the past couple of decades, and I was just looking around this room and it's like seeing a kind of a palimpsest of my career in brand entertainment. The great, the good and the not so good. Lots of us have been there and done it, and we've done it in completely different ways, and hopefully there's a few of you who've never heard our spiel before, and it will all be exciting and original and refreshing. So, my name is Sam Glynn, and I am the head of EMEA for UTA's Department of, let me get this right, Entertainment and Culture Marketing. So it's a big Hollywood agency, and I'm running their business in Europe to work with brands and bring them into the entertainment and culture industry. Branded entertainment. So I've got really big print here, so I don't have to put my glasses on, so if I look like a funny old lady, excuse me. It's been around for forever, and we know soap operas originated with branded entertainment. We've seen everything from Reese's Pieces in E.T., we've seen the cup of Coca-Cola on the desk in American Idol, we've seen the Lego Movie, we've seen it span genres. Sometimes we've noticed it, sometimes we haven't. And there's this endless debate. Oh, this is the year of branded entertainment. There's a recession. Everyone's going to want branded entertainment. Or everyone's got loads of money. They're going to spend it on branded entertainment. I think everyone who's worked in this industry, we kind of feel a little bit like those illegitimate children from the very important grown-ups. And we're always trying to shout and make ourselves heard. And people come to us sometimes going, I need some money. And you're like, yeah, yeah. And when we come to them and say, we've got this amazing idea for a brand, do you want to make it? They're like, no, that's not creative enough, or that's too problematic. So we're here with my amazing panel to help demystify the process and make branded entertainment into a really exciting and positive thing. So we're going to go through the detail of how to make branded entertainment, how to measure branded entertainment, what benchmarks there are. But before we get to my lovely friends here, there's a few words we're going to be bandying around. So branded entertainment, branded content, brand storytelling, product placement, prop placement. There's so many different terms for our ecosystem. But I do like the word entertainment, because entertainment is something that audiences will seek out regardless of whether or not it has been funded by a brand. So it's about having an engagement with an audience and them having a relationship with that content and being emotionally invested in it and having, taking something out of it, something they'll think about or talk about. And that's key. So that's why I always like branded entertainment as the kind of overarching description. As I said before, I work at UTA now. I used to work at a traditional broadcaster at Fremantle, and that was great. And I had a lovely experience here, and there's some nice people from Fremantle over there. But I did feel that branded entertainment was about to explode, and I wanted to be somewhere where it could explode in multiple touch points, that we could have branded entertainment on TV, we could have it on digital and social, we could have it in the metaverse, we could have it as a podcast, we could have it as a consumer product, we could have it as a live event, we could have it as a PR thing. And we've got people from media agency here who will talk about how brands will really work to make all those touch points come alive. And as TV producers in the room, you need to think about more than TV and think about the fact that your content may sit on television as a primary place, but it is going to be disseminated across the universe. And that's how the brand will get its return on investment when it puts money into a piece of content. So what is branded entertainment in all its guises? It can be an original piece of IP. It can be a reclaim, as with Dulux, of changing rooms of an old piece of IP that's much loved and cherished. It can be a segment of branded content within a bigger piece. It can actually be a product placement thing that explodes into a bigger piece of content. It can be a co-marketing campaign around a piece of content where the brand is never in the show but activates around it. So it's absolutely integrated into the IP in a different way. It can exist on broadcast networks, on streamers, podcasts, social, gaming, Web3, real life. It can be anything, really, which probably doesn't help you very much here, but we're going to focus on getting television programmes on air with the help of brands. So I think the primary focus here is how do you guys get a TV show on TV because you've had a brand help fund it. So we're going to talk specifically about bringing individual shows and series of shows onto TV. And Catherine can talk about her experiences at Channel 4. But we'll also talk about creating a one-off documentary or a one-off show, taking it to a film festival and then having it as a second window on one of our networks. So Adam can talk to that amongst other things. It can also, we'll talk about lots of examples of stuff that we think is excellent. We'll talk about how those pieces of content might win awards and legitimise them in the greater industry. It can be a drama, and Sinead's here, I think, so we can talk about how you can include brands inside soap operas and maybe even a feature film. It's a lot more long-winded and complicated, but it can be done, and I'm excited to see more of that kind of stuff around. Branded entertainment can also be part of a bigger media play. So I got into branded entertainment with Mr. Nolan over there when we launched the Audi channel back in... and that was the world's first ever brand content channel on Sky for 24/7, and it was an exciting experience. But then we've had Red Bull, so David over there worked at Red Bull, and he can tell us all about the experience of being a media owner with brands. It can also be, I can't remember, put my glasses on here, let me have a look. But branded entertainment can also exist in multiple media, and we'll have Richard and Adam talking about how a brand will play out across different platforms in order to measure, because TV is a really, really hard thing to measure in terms of what effect a brand has had inside the show. But when it's taken out of the TV universe and put onto social and digital, then you have a really strong ROI and possibly a purchase path. And we'll talk a little bit about e-commerce. We're going to talk about a lot. I don't think we're going to manage it all. And I know what everyone's going to ask here, or someone's going to ask it. Can branded entertainment ever exist on a streamer? So we'll tackle that problem, and the answer is yes, it can, but it's incredibly complicated. There's ways to do it, and we've got our friends at Branded Entertainment Network over there who can help us answer those questions. If you have prop placement instead of paid product placement, if you are an acquisition rather than a commission, if you are creating a co-marketing campaign instead of being inside the show, yes, there's ways to get onto the streamers. And as more of the SVODs become AVODs, I think there'll be more and more opportunities for brands to legitimately integrate themselves into TV shows on Netflix, Amazon, etc. So lots of creative challenges and lots of compliance challenges. The UK broadcast industry is one of the strictest in the world in terms of compliance. And Hella, you've got a little bit more liberty to play around with content because she's from Denmark and she can talk about an international perspective. But if we can get it right here, then you can get it right anywhere else. And I think the streamers are going to probably use our kind of UK benchmarks and our quite strict Ofcom regulations as a way to behave. So key to all of this is a relationship between you as a producer, you and the broadcaster, you and the brand, you and the media agency, possibly the creative agency, and the audience. And I think keeping that relationship really solid and intact is what makes the best possible branded entertainment, and also branded entertainment that will scale, that will travel across seasons and territories and platforms, and have that kind of robust IP that we love in the greatest formats. So let me introduce you to our panel. So I've not got this in order here. Here we have Hella, and she is the founder and chief operating officer at Bytes. And do you want to introduce yourself and play a clip?
Yeah, yes, hello everyone, nice to see you. I'm the only not native, so I hope I get everything. Well, Bytes is actually a streaming service for only branded entertainment, so we kind of disrupt the space, the distribution space a little bit. And maybe you can just have a short feeling of what the platform actually offers.
Oh my.
Richard is the CEO at ClickOn, without a reel.
Without a reel. I have a slide. Maybe the slide will work. Maybe it won't. Cue the slide. I'm Rich. I'm the founder and CEO of ClickOn. We are a content company, a hybrid content and technology company. We help brands deliver. I know a lot of you here from the sort of the TV world. Here we go for examples. We're much more in a digital space. So don't throw rocks at me. We help brands deliver always-on campaigns from long-form branded all the way through to always-on social. And there's a few examples on there, and some of which hopefully I can talk to you about today.
And Catherine also has a slide. Catherine Marlowe is the Senior Linear Branded Entertainment Lead at Channel 4.
More pictures on your slide. Yes, so I'm Catherine. So I sit within the 4 sales team, but I head up all of the brand and entertainment conversations across Channel 4 for linear TV. I work very closely with Ian Katz, obviously Kieran, Emma Hardy, and for those of you in the room, obviously that know that side of the business, I work with them really, really closely to work differently with brands, either unlocking new opportunities that we're very excited about as a channel, and we can take those out proactively to brands, or also as well fielding brand briefs. We have been on a little bit on a pause. I know some of you in the room might not have been able to have those conversations just because we were running a little bit over capacity, but it is still very important to us as part of our offering and as something that we need. So yes, we are gently coming off pause, and yes, that's me. I'll come on later and talk about more.
We've got David Granger there.
Hello, David Granger. I'm the content director at cinch.co.uk. In a previous life, I was editor-in-chief of redbull.com, so I worked out of the Austrian media house, and that's where we took ideas and this might be my video. I have to pay this in order for Cinch to pay my train fare. So. We can play it because
no train fare.
Train fare is not going to pay itself. Yeah.
So 2022 is almost done. As you can see, the Cinch office is almost empty. What a year it's been for YouTube. Thank you to everyone who subscribed to our channel. And for those of you who haven't, why haven't you? You're going to see exactly what you've been missing out on in just a second. But before you do, have a happy new year and see you in 2023 for an even bigger one. Naughty, doesn't it? And it is a bit naughty, look at it. But my goodness, this thing is fast. You and I are living through one of the most exciting periods of automotive history yet. Oh man, I love this car so much, even when it's trying to slide me off the road in a hairpin. Oh yeah, this is exactly the sort of stuff you want from your premium Audi. Oh yeah, this is a bit of me, bit of Lord. Welcome back to Rockingham, where you might have noticed we've had it the lick of paint hours. That's something I've never experienced before in my life.
You like cars then?
Yeah, we like cars, and also not particularly subtle branding of racetracks as well.
And then just recently flown in from New York and struggling with his jet lag is Adam Patelski, who's the global head of content at Wavemaker.
I'm told I have a different perspective than some of you guys because I'm a New Yorker about the value of branded content. I don't think we should play the video, actually. I think we could get into talking, but I'll give an interesting perspective on the name of this session is brand-funded entertainment. I think more and more, I think we need to start educating brands that it's more like unbranded entertainment in that, like you said earlier, it's entertainment. I think part of my job is bringing clients on board in a world where, sitting at a media agency, I see fewer people are consuming ads. So brands could become the gatekeepers for interesting and exciting entertainment. I think everyone in this room has a critical role in delivering that for the future. Don't play the video. It's fine.
He's just about to go off to Sundance after
Yeah.
to have
To
his...
talk about this video, but we don't. I'll talk about it rather than play the video.
Right, so where do we begin? What's the starting point for a piece of branded entertainment? Is it a brief from the brand? Is it something the production company creates? Is it the broadcaster creating a slot? Catherine, I'm going to point at you.
Yes. Well, from Channel 4's point of view, we've sort of formalised 3 different routes for TV branded entertainment. Obviously within 4 Sales. So my focus, as I said before, is kind of meeting with the commissioners, understanding what they're really, really excited about. And I know that that's a real challenge, and certainly for a lot of you pitching to them in the room. One commissioner said to me the other day, they get between 50 and 100 ideas a week. It is really, really tough to decipher what they want to take forward. But I meet with them regularly to understand what they're excited about, and then what might be the ideas that perhaps aren't budgeted for, that we might be able to find a brand partner for. So there is a proactive route. We've sort of called it commissioner-led. They're the ones that we will start to bring out, obviously in partnership with the producer and the producing partner, come out and obviously understand what's Channel 4's role in that, what are we offering as part of this, and trying to bring that out to market. The second route, which we had to press pause on, just as I said, because we had so many deals going through, is taking brand briefs. So really excited to start engaging back with the media agencies, understanding what brands are interested in this space. And third of all, we also understand that as producers, a lot of you in the room have your own relationships with brands, and sometimes the deal is already done by the time it comes to us. That's absolutely fine. We're kind of giving as much support as we can do for our indies, obviously, and the remit that we have to make sure that those deals are brought in safely. I think irrespective, it's making sure that everyone's really clear about the terms before we begin, because we've all been in those scenarios. I can see enough faces in this room and enough of us that have been doing it a long time, and I said this earlier, suddenly you realise the reason why a brand has bought something is not the reason why you've sold it. And there's that awful misunderstanding, ideally not halfway through, but something that needs to be laid sometimes halfway through. But yes, so for us, there's 3 different routes. That's kind of how we're trying to simplify things, but obviously supporting the production teams and also as well the media agencies within those conversations.
And what platforms should you be looking at for branded entertainment? I mean, you've got a nice global overview, and you've seen success stories from around the world. Where does branded entertainment thrive?
Well, broadcast is definitely one of the platforms that I would see branded entertainment live very, very good at. But also, I would say publishers. We do see publishers looking into this space, actually also producing content, distributing it, trying to get it to live on the publisher sites. Streaming services, we all know that Netflix have not a full section, but they have quite some branded content, branded series. Now, obviously, we built another digital service, like a platform only for branded entertainment out of our own business, which is also kind of disruptive and a new, I would say, way of displaying branded content, get it out to more people. But the social medias as well. I think one of the main problems that we see is that you can have a beautiful piece of branded content, but once you want to publish it in the digital space, you need to chop it up. Mm-hmm. So where do you actually get the full length, the long form version to live, and where do you actually capture the engagement from the audience? Because, yeah, we all know that short form is really what they want in the digital space.
Yeah, and they can measure it.
I do actually believe also very much in what Catherine says, that part of the branded, very good branded content, to get it out there and to get the attention that it deserves, would be in new partnerships. Could be new partnerships with Channel 4 and another partner that you have not seen. Could be a publisher, could be Bytes, could be like anywhere else. So who can do the reach and who can do the long tail? I definitely think we should look into how can we get it even wider out to audiences.
So that's on the kind of distribution side. Creatively, what's inspiring you all? So I'm going to look at you because you look like a creative person.
Yeah, no, I'm actually not the creative one in our business, believe it or not. But actually, following off on the back of that as well, just quickly before I go on to that, I think in our world, you know, yes, publishers come up with great ideas, but actually I think brands are becoming their own publishers now. I think social media has inverted the entire space, entire advertising industry. And I think brands are realizing they can create their own content, long form, short form, not always long, hour-long episodes, but even just 10-minute long. And like you said, cut up into lots of different formats to be distributed across channels. And we're seeing that a lot with almost every client that we're working with. You know, how does a brand become a publisher? And I think you're seeing a lot more of that now with brands building in-house studios as well, to try and create content at the frequency they need to sort of create relationships with their customers. Now that didn't answer your question. I'll now go back to your question. I think it's honest storytelling. You know, we've seen huge success in just bringing brands back to their humble roots. Sounds cliche. I think a lot of brands really struggle to do it. I always joke. We were talking about it. Yeah.
There are a ton of stories that brands, if they're like, could have the opportunity to say, right? Like we were talking about Colgate earlier. During the pandemic, they donated millions and millions of bars of soap. And now, that's an interesting story that, if you find the right creator, could tell it in a really compelling way. Sticking with Colgate, Hills donates a ton of resources to pet science, right? If as a pet owner, there's nothing more important than making sure that my pet is being fed the right food, and the veterinarian is being celebrated. And there's, again, an amazing story to tell. And to build on your point, the brand also has their own audience built in with social media. So with the right partnership, the right story, the right distribution mechanism, there's no reason why there can't be amazing entertainment being produced from every single brand on the planet. That's what makes it a brand, the story, and the story they have to tell.
So we were joking before about the Can, which is not a dance, but it's a double award-winning process whereby the ultimate holy grail for branded entertainment is, can you be at Cannes Film Festival and win, and then can you go to Cannes Lions and win, which you've kind of done.
Yeah. I'm being shy.
You know, to talk about that.
No, we can talk about it. I think so. There's something that's very like we talk a lot about what's the story that a brand needs to tell, and it's important to understand it doesn't necessarily need to involve the brand. What is the story that the brand wants consumers to tell, right? We were talking about 5B and they were celebrating nurses. The work that we're celebrating at Sundance is tomorrow, quite honestly, is totally different. There's an American pharmaceutical company that just came out with an amazing new drug, which is designed, it's an obesity drug. It's a monthly injection, and in clinical trials, people lost about 15% of their body weight. That is an absolute life changer. And anyone who's been impacted by obesity knows, you know, it's not just your fault, right? There are so many contributing factors to obesity. There's government subsidies, factory farming, sedentary lifestyle, GMOs. In America, as an American, there's also, you know, there's overwhelming options for fast food. Poverty is an issue. Genetics are an issue. So there are so many. The more you know about the contributing factors to obesity, the more empathetic you become. We felt like that was an opportunity for, and a story to be told without the brand being involved. Because the more people that are comfortable talking about their weight and the truth about their weight, the more likely they are to ask their doctor and talk to their family about a potential solution. Now, I get personal about this because I was actually, in my life, I've been impacted by obesity. My mother was obese my whole childhood. I'm going to talk in American terms. I'm hoping you understand. I was 5, when I was in high school, I was 5'4" and 210 pounds. I don't know if that means anything to you guys. It's kind of like, for context, right now I'm 5'9" and 180. So I was a little pudgy boy. And it impacted every part of my life. And if a drug like this existed, my life would have been totally different. So when we heard about this drug, we felt the world needs to be comfortable in their own skin to talk about it. And that's the story that we're telling. And you saw, I didn't show the film. It's called Thick Skin. We could, why don't we show it? Want to show the film? Do you guys want to see it? Yeah, let's do it. Let's show the film. But while he's queuing it up, we spoke a bit about the difference between America and Britain in the availability for brand storytelling. And I think, you know, we touched on it earlier. If it's entertaining, it's interesting, right? And the brand doesn't need to be, if it's commissioned by the brand, we need to think about what the brand's getting in return, which is what you spoke about earlier. Is it getting the assets for marketing materials surrounding it? Is it getting their money back? Sometimes that's all they need, right? And I think what we need to do as marketers, but also as collaborators and partners, is what's in it for everyone, right? Like as an agency, I want to make sure that my client is going to drive my client's business, and everyone will benefit from it, and we'll be able to use that to work on other brands and have more celebration. So let's cue the video. Sorry, dude, I keep talking.
I've heard big boned, husky, chubby. You're so beautiful, so talented, but you're fat. Obesity is not a fun word. There's a lot of hate behind that word. It's killer to your self-esteem. How can you live like that? Growing up, I had an eating disorder.
My mom always singled me out about my weight.
Fatness is not just about being fat. It's the way we distinguish who is better than someone else.
It took me a long time to love myself.
How do I get back to this person who wasn't defeated? Like, my fat body is enough.
I believe in health, but people have different body types.
Making positive decisions because you love your body, that's when I'm healthy.
My body doesn't negate everything else that I am. There's no limits for us.
Very cool, Anna.
Very cool. So, I mean, that's a model we've seen a lot from the States, whereby a brand will fund a feature-length documentary. It will go to a film festival. The PR value it will generate will justify the investment in the film, but then it might also get sold to a distributor, which will pay the brand back the money of their investment. It might go theatrical release and then onto multiple platforms, from streamers to local. So the content is evergreen and global, and that must be a fantastic win for the brand.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm going to be tired, but it's really exciting.
Which brings us on to the economics. So we've seen that the brand can keep their face clean. As a production company, how are you going to make your money? What does the brand bring to the table? So it might bring finance, but we're going to talk later about you might even have to staff up to help manage that brand and all those stakeholders. But I think there's other things it can bring. It can bring access to talent. It can bring access to events. It can bring amazing marketing to your finished show. So quite often these producers go, oh, why do we have to work with a brand? And you go, no, because this brand, once they've invested in your piece of content, they're going to pay to drive audiences to it. So it's going to be a win-win for the broadcaster and for the production company. But how does it work in terms of ownership? And again, Catherine, I'm going to come to you. And if you're a producer and a brand's been involved in your project, are they going to want some of your IP? Is it going to affect your long tail? Is it going to affect your distribution mechanisms? Is it going to have a negative impact?
Well, and I think it really depends on the different types of deals, and we've struck, and there are some people in there, I can see BBC Studios here. I think for us, when a project comes to us, as I mentioned, that sort of third route where there are producer-led deals, we know that sometimes we're just the UK element, almost like we're a bit like the test bed for a new format. And so from a brand perspective, whether they're coming at it to create revenue off the back of format sales or kind of helping that distribution wider, every deal conversation is different. However, I guess the origination start point, if we're starting from scratch, is there's still the same terms of trade that we deal with, but there is that recognition that the brand will require additional assets or will require, that extended usage, which is in everyone's favour to obviously encourage more serious promotion, obviously make it clear that they've had an association with it, and to take it further. So I think it's been really interesting, as I said, the point at which we have been engaged, just on a couple of the projects that we've been involved with, whether we're originating it and coming out to the market, or whether it's a conversation that's kind of being brought to us.
And David,
It's a very loose answer, but it kind of is all different, and it's about knowing what everyone needs to get up front, so that then that's the kind of the mindset that you're going into when you're negotiating.
So David, you've been brand side. What do you want? Do you care about the IP and the rights, or do you just want to use the content as a marketing mechanism?
Yeah, I mean, I think Red Bull is a unique example, and it's because it was a drinks company that it decided that all its marketing was going to be, it was brand funded entertainment. So it was all the stories around those athletes, artists, musicians, and how that whole lifestyle gave them their wings. You know, it even became part of the vernacular. So, and then it developed, as Rich says, you know, we became not just a brand that did some media, we became a media house. And in, I think it was 2015, we started Red Bull TV, and that was a very kind of, it was nascent in that it didn't really know what it was going to do. It knew that it was going to tell longer format stories about Red Bull athletes, but that developed, and then, you know, some of it, we had feature films, and they went on to Netflix. They started to win awards. The Dawn Wall won several awards. So it was a brand that was funding entertainment, but also at the same time, we were then taking money from other people. We were then creating content on behalf of it. So we were starting to be commissioned by Puma, by Adidas, by Audi, interestingly. And 20th Century Fox came to us, and we did sort of smaller pieces. But they wanted that the way that we produce content. So from Red Bull as a brand, it was all about making sure it was entertaining. It reinforced the brand values, which were drilled into us from day one at Red Bull. It was like there were 7 things, and we had to do it, and it had to tick all those boxes to make sure that the content worked. It was entertainment, but it was brand funded. So Red Bull was a really interesting example. From Cinch's perspective now, what we want is content that we're happy to pay for, providing it has a function, and that functionality could be to drive awareness, drive consideration, to drive comprehension. It becomes a marketing tool that we use as a brand to fund part of our marketing. So yeah, it's 2 different ways of doing it, and Red Bull is unique. And the sad thing is when the guy who started Red Bull, Mr. Mateschitz, he died in October, there were so many LinkedIn posts about, you know, 7 things you can learn from Red Bull, 14 things that you can take away. And the trouble is Red Bull was unique because it developed a media house, but it was prepared to invest so much money in its content. And that's why I think it's different, and it probably won't be repeated in the same model.
So, thank you. Moving on from that, I feel that the next phase for branded entertainment might be to have a functional e-commerce layer. And, you know, I'm seeing Amazon starting to marry church and state a little bit, and thinking around how they can have products in their shows that then you can go and buy on their marketplace. Do any of you have any ideas about, you know, how quickly that might happen, how effective it might be? Do audiences want to buy what they can see on TV? You know, I often see a dress, a sofa, really nice hair colour, and think, I want that, and go and search for it afterwards, and it's frustrating. And as much as I hate to be blatantly sold to, I think we live in a culture now where we're used to being able to access that information very, very quickly.
There needs to be a practical application to commerce. It doesn't necessarily need to be click and buy, but there needs to be an easy connection so that, like we were talking about a travel show that we're working on, where the insight was that during the pandemic, luxury was something that was internalized. You bought a new couch, you bought a new television, you bought a new new bed, and then as the world started opening up, all the things that you did, all the new experiences, you learned how to smoke meat or make pasta or learn how to make clay. Now you want to experience that in the real world. We're talking about producing a show that takes you on those apprentice trips, on going to Stockholm, to the preeminent salmon smoker around the world, or going to Cairo and making clay, or Istanbul and learning how they grind the spices in the spice market. It's an interesting show, but as the travel company that we're working with still needs people to book to get butts and seats. So what we're doing is at the end of every episode, we're having the URL/Istanbul. And you can book the entire apprentice trip where you're speaking to the folks who are actually doing it and getting the same tangible experience that you saw on television. Now, it's not the same thing as X-Ray with Amazon, where you see something and you like the shirt, you click it, and it winds up in your shopping cart. But it still has a practical application so the brand understands it's going to drive business. I think that's an important component.
I think it's going to take longer than people think. I'm not naming any names, but you look at a lot of the brands, and I think Adam will probably see this much more than I do, but the link between the marketing to the e-commerce teams and the CRMs and everything else that live in the middle of the data lakes are, sometimes they're run by separate teams who don't even like to speak to each other. And I think a lot of the new era companies, like the Monzos, the Starlings, these new era companies have it figured out. A lot of the bigger institutions, bigger companies, you know, they're 10 years plus from, I think, really getting that digital transformation piece figured out, and I think that
it will happen.
I think it will happen. It
And
has
then
to.
on Bytes as well, you must see content that, you know, it needs to do something else, that it's there to entertain, but because people are going to a destination for branded content,
Exactly.
then they might expect more.
And I think it belongs to verticals, and actually I think we will see more verticals will come into, call it e-commerce, or call it into any kind of CTA in connection with their branded content. Charity, for instance, and now we get back to where we started with, are you touched? Do you emotionally engage with the content? I mean, and you do that with, I would say, charity content. So the likeliness of you donating right after seeing, you know, this very emotional cancer movie or documentary is definitely where you can, I mean, you can call it e-commerce, you can call it call to action. But I think also in the car industry, let's take Audi as an example. We run shows from Audi where they basically carpool with entrepreneurs. So it's not about the car, it's about the interview, it's about the story of the individual entrepreneur. But I mean, if you engage with Audi for 30 minutes and you do that 10 times because they have 10 shows, I mean, the likeliness of you booking that test drive of that Audi that you have seen is probably just higher than if you met them in an ad.
Well, what I would say for everyone in the room, I think it's a good story because the world is getting more privacy crazy, not less. And I think in a world of attribution, you need cookies to follow that user journey because it's never linear. It goes up and down and backwards and forwards. And so actually, I think, you know, brands will go more into branded content. They'll go, you know, more back into how do you really build an emotional connection with a brand in a world where they can't track the journey from beginning all the way to the end. This might be.
Which brings us back onto compliance. Oh, sorry. We're obviously not allowed to do much. We couldn't have your obesity drug program on our...
Well, we're not talking about the benefits and the side effects, but I get your point.
Yeah, but if you had the brand involved, but the brand's funded it.
The brand paid for it, but they're not involved in it.
Well, we have alcohol who can fund, you know, alcohol brands can fund
It'd be fun to
TV
figure
series. They
it
just can't
out.
integrate. It's just the product placement rules, obviously, that we have to navigate with.
Yeah, there's no
our
product
friends
placement.
at
There's
Ofcom.
no product placement.
What can we get away? Can we get away with more than we think we can, is the question. If we are really clever about embedding that purpose into the content, and without shouting out verbal and visual mentions for the brands, can we do more than we think we can? I'm pointing at you
I
again.
think we can, and there's also that question, which is there's what we can do versus Ofcom, and then there's maybe what we should do. There's almost an element of sort of taste that comes in. So when I was at Unilever previous to Channel 4, but it was a project with Channel 4, we did Hair Power, me and My Afro, which was an incredible one-off documentary that we did with Pulse Films. And actually, from a brand point of view, what was great was it just didn't feel like the conversation needed to be had around discrimination of black hair in Britain. It wasn't relevant to then have Dove hair products sort of used throughout. So actually, the decision from a brand point of view was, well, let's just take a beat. And I think that is something that, you know, media agencies are really great. It's something that we discuss, which is, you know, what's the permission here, and kind of when you're thinking about that view in there. That in that mind state when they're kind of wanting to be entertained, I guess there is that question, which is, even if we didn't have Ofcom, how far would we want to go? When does it add to the storytelling, and then maybe where is that sense where it might actually start to detract? That is a real fine line. I think our compliance teams are hugely collaborative, and we always try and find ways to push the boat. There's something that wasn't necessarily brand funded, but I know it kind of caused a bit of a stir around Audi's next big thing with South Shore, which was great. You know, that's more of an access piece. But it showcased the brand in a really interesting way, in a really engaging way that pulled in the audience. It wasn't brand funded as such, but I think that's what's interesting. I think sometimes there absolutely is the role for the brand. Other times it might just be starting that conversation, and then within the assets around the program or the series, that's where you can dial up, you know, more calls to action or something that starts to feel like when you've got that permission and you've hooked in those, you know, that audience, then what have you got to say to them? But maybe you've used that really engaging content to kind of shift them a little bit forward or familiarise yourselves, if you are from a brand point of view. So I think that's the trick.
Thank you. would you mind cueing the lift reel, please? So this is an illustration of how we at UTA try to normalise ride sharing. So my department, its job is to basically curate the careers of consumer brands in entertainment and culture as if they were A-list celebrities. So in this case, Lyft, it was early days and people were not used to, forget Uber as a competitor, people did not want to get into a car with a stranger that they found on an app. So they decided, they came to UTA and said, look guys, can you get us into entertainment? Can you get us into Hollywood to normalise the concept of ride sharing? So by working with writers' rooms and gifting them Lyft vouchers or working directly with producers and doing paid product placements and basically seamlessly integrating Lyft into storylines, we created a number of moments which you've seen across streamers. And to me, they seem really compliant and really natural and organic, but they are placements by a brand. So I think, you know, slightly pushing the boundaries, but normalising things that we use in everyday life, and we start to call them a Lyft or an Uber rather than a ride share, then that becomes a really interesting way to integrate brands. Promotion. So once you're creating content for a brand, you've got your 30-minute TV program, you've got your 6-part series, you've got your 90-minute feature film. What else as TV producers should you be thinking about making in the stratosphere? Should you be looking at podcasts? Should you be making social content? Should you stick to just doing what you know best and work with other companies that deliver those assets? Or should you be diversifying as a company and be able to deliver all touch points? You.
I think you touched on it earlier, that that brands would actually do a lot of the promotion for the show. There's a couple of shows that I watch, and I think they're American shows, but they're available. There's that new Apple TV show with Jon Stewart. It's called What's the Problem with Jon Stewart? Is that only in America? I guess so. It's an interesting show, and they film. It's kind of like The Daily Show. They film it once a week or once a month. They have interesting guests, and it's a television show in a studio. And what they do is they just turn the exact show into a podcast. So whether you're on the go on a train or in a car or you're watching it on your couch, you're getting the same sort of experience. And then from there, they also cut the segments down and post them on social media. So you're able to sort of get the snippets of the important bits that you're looking for. And I know as the this is another thing I talk about, the modern Christmas special, which there are some producers in here that can help me do this. I think that if you're the Miracle on 34th Street, which was funded by Macy's 50 years ago, would never be produced today because there's no world where everyone's sitting on their couch for 90 minutes to watch a Christmas special. The modern Christmas special is consumed in bits and pieces over the course of a series of days. It's on social media, it's on TikTok, it's on your TV for 20 minutes while you're also on your phone, it's then on your computer, it's on a podcast. The modern entertainment ecosystem is diverse and engaging and entertaining and provides a really interesting palette to tell both a linear and a non-linear story.
But I think as a brand, that's exactly what you want to ensure, that those consumers that consume content in different formats, whether it be linear, whether it be streaming, whether it be the teenagers on TikTok, you need to ensure that happens. So in answer to your question, the expectation is that it's not just the TV show, it's everything else, because that is expected from a brand perspective.
But do we make it as producers ourselves, or do we have multiple partners that we work with, or do we leave that to the agency and brand to pick those people?
I think if there was a production company that was able to illustrate that they have the breadth as a one-stop shop, sign me up for that, right?
Okay, there you go.
Does that answer your question? I mean, right? I mean, we know that we need it all, and we want to make, the reason we're working with a production company is because we want their sensibility. We want to speak to their audience in the right way. And if you're able to do that across an entire portfolio of media apertures, then that's great.
And use the talent from the show across those different platforms as well.
Which I think, there is a real cost efficiency for brands in doing that, because yes, there might be sort of the production series cost, which again, if you can ask, a distribution partner to sort of share within that, great. But I think then in terms of that sparks the conversation, and then all the other assets that you can get out of that. Again, though, what we would always encourage indies to do, and producers that we work with, is to be honest about what your skill set is. And if it starts to, so understand, kind of the campaign or the ecosystem in which this is going to live from a brand point of view, as well as obviously from a broadcast point of view. And yeah, we've worked with multiple partners on one particular deal because everyone has their different specialisms. At the same time, it still needs to feel cohesive and work together and kind of understand all those different audiences where they are, what are they expecting in that moment. So again, like it's just constantly thinking of audience first, whether you are the brand or whether you are us, what does that audience want in that moment and how best can you deliver that? But yeah, we would definitely recommend from a production perspective, the scope of that, like being really clear on the scope, kind of where you can, where you can't go, and then absolutely then there's a conversation to be had, okay, well then how can we do the rest?
I think there's two approaches as well, isn't there? From the broadcast perspective, it's probably a little bit more prescribed. Where we come in at the almost the direct brand publisher level, they want everything from the start. So you're thinking about podcasts, 9x16, 16x9, 30 second, 5 second, 6 second. Everything's got to come in one big package right from the minute they green light the idea. And I think that's how we generally look at stuff. A good example, the Navy in the US. We've got something to talk about. So, we did a lot of work with your compadres at BMI over there. And, that is long-form branded, but it's every single month. So it might be between a 6 to 10-minute long-form doc. But that's followed by hundreds, sometimes thousands of assets that create that journey from people who might see a banner, they'll go to something on TikTok. They'll always divert back to the long-form. But it's slightly different to the more traditional model where you are, but in a digital world, that's how we operate. And by the way, these 10-minute videos, they load them up as pre-roll. They watch them. They had 2 million US teens watching 8-minute videos on pre-roll all the way to the last minute because they were relevant, because they were engaging, they told stories, it's authentic.
And is it a little bit more sustainable if you've got a one-stop shop rather than repeating the process amongst multiple partners?
It's not easy. It's
It's kind of economies of scale as well, isn't it? And again, it's that kind of, it's almost like the DNA of the same storytelling kind of running all the way throughout. But I guess there is also a reality of, as I said before, the skill set, the scope, and the resource available. But I think it's just about clarifying that up front. And it is, as you say, it's much easier if the brand does always declare that at the very beginning. How are they going to intend on kind of distributing this on their channels? Well, we need to know that up front. So that, it's so much harder to kind of go back. You can get so much when you're planning that shoot rather than having to go back after the event and kind of try and recapture it.
I think we've made it all sound very, very complicated and difficult, and you're going to run out going, no. We keep coming back to this idea of stakeholders and all the different people who are going to be playing in this ecosystem. Is it possible to do it simply? Oh, that's a very long silence. If it's not possible to do it simply, what is an effective way to manage it from a production company's perspective? Is it to have someone in your team who is dedicated to looking after branded content? Is that sustainable if you're only going to be doing one of those projects a year? Should you be using freelancers to bring them in? Should you be leaning heavily on the broadcaster or on the agency and trust their expertise to help you navigate that universe? What other models might there be to help you get through this very, very complex
I think
forest?
For the brands, it's expectation and education. So the expectation has to be set out up front as to what is going to be produced, how it's going to be delivered, and what you get. And then education, we had, as a brand, there have several occasions I've had, we've produced content where the audience is 2 and it's the CEO and his daughter who's on Instagram. And you have to be really careful that as a brand, you don't kind of take that on and then dictate, or not dictate, but you don't then say to the commissioning partner, this is what we want and this is why we want it, because the CEO wants it. So I think it's about expectation and education. The expectation has to be set up front, and then education, certainly within a brand, as to what you will get and what it will deliver in terms of both the content, the entertainment, and also the return on any investment you've made.
think the word simple threw me. That's why we all sort of looked blankly back at you, because I wouldn't necessarily term it that. But then again, I don't think sort of TV production, or I'm sure everyone will speak, that's never simple necessarily, but so many people in this room understand that world. I think what it's about is, and we've sort of started to do this, we have sort of foresight sessions where we will sit down with the producer, the media agency and the brand, and we almost sort of anticipate, where could this get a little bit challenging? You know, what do you need to deliver for your stakeholders? What do we need to deliver for ours? And if we did hit that bump in the road, how would we collectively, how would we resolve that? Hopefully that's not manifesting all these issues that then might follow. But I think it's more about genuinely being prepared about that, and being open and transparent, because so much, I think sometimes, this isn't off the shelf. I guess that's another thing to say. This isn't inventory. This is such a hugely creative process, and it should be, and there's so much magic that comes out of it as well to be celebrated. However, there will be some things that kind of come up last minute. There's decisions that need to be made, and I think it's just about being realistic with everyone, whether that's resource, time available, and willingness. So yeah, again, we're saying the same thing. It's just trying to lay out as much as possible. And that really helps to build the trust, because there is an element, and I really respect the brand side on this, when if there is a huge investment that they've made, there's always that element in the middle where it feels like they're just waiting for those first edits. And there must be a point where all the stakeholders are that sort of, they have to report back to, you know, they want to see that finished article. We're more used to that. Our commissioners are more used to that in terms of that refining process. But, you know, that's kind of quite tricky if a brand has never done this before. They're placing a huge amount of trust in this. So I think it's just about being fair with that and realising that.
Thank you. So if we haven't put you all off, are there any questions from the audience for any of our panel?
This question probably, Adam, sorry, I'm going to put you a bit in the hot seat here. It's rewinding a little bit before green light, Catherine, and also before a campaign is won. We get so many briefs. I mean, Argonon's one of the biggest indie groups in the country, and we have brilliant creatives, brilliant heads to creative development, talent producers that have great relationships on and off screen, great execs. We're asked to do a hell of a lot for free, and we don't get championed.
No, that's
and,
a very
you know,
good
and
point.
who knows who's actually championing it? If a brand suddenly on a whim thinks, nah, we've done maybe weeks and weeks, thousands and thousands of pounds for free. And I know, you know, it makes absolute sense for us to work with brands and work with Catherine and the likes of Catherine, because tariffs are getting smaller. If we can bring income in, it's a win-win for everyone. If it can go global, it's brilliant. We love the idea and the model, but it's harder and harder for people like me to be that bridge, to go back to credible exec producers and their teams and say, do all this work for free, effectively, and actually often we just don't even get a call back.
It's a two-part answer.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, long question, but it's important.
But the first part of it is, you know, don't do it for free if you don't think you're going to get a call back, right? Like there are people there are people from my side who are trustworthy and honest and forthcoming, and will work with you as a partner and keep you on and take you on the journey. Because sometimes the money goes away, or the client gets a new job, and by nature the finest work that I've seen is 12 to 18 months from conception to completion. It just is. And I spend a lot of my time taking the client on the journey, explaining to them, it's not going to be on an 89-day cycle like your quarterly earnings report. It's a different type of story you need to tell. That's the first part. If you don't truly trust the person on the other side of the phone as a partner, charge a development fee, right? Tell them it's going to. Everyone needs to be paid for their work. The other challenge that happens is a lot of times, historically, media owners have given away that type of thinking for free in the event that they're going to get the media buy, right? So a potential solution would be to ensure that distribution is part of the initial thinking. And in my job, I say this to my clients all the time, and I probably shouldn't, but if I present something and we produce something that doesn't get distribution, working at a media agency, I'm going to lose my job. So I'm always looking for the distribution guarantee. So I think there's a way at the planning stage where if you're able to guarantee a distribution and you understand what the competition is and you understand who the audience is, both at the agency, at the client, and everywhere, it's still going to happen, but you'll mitigate the risk of it happening. Does that answer the question?
Be brutal, Debbie.
I'd say the same for me, well, for us and for Channel 4, and that is why we now have these regular sessions where almost, if there is a brand brief, first of all, I need to check, is that in an area that we're editorially interested in to develop, so to actually put our own money in, because I think that's really important, so that there needs to be some investment from the channel as well, so maybe it's not always the brand that is bearing the risk. So unless I'm confident, or for example, if an idea has already been pitched to our commissioners, I need to know where that's going to go in the schedule, because what are the predicted ratings? What's the sponsorship payback going to be for the brand? So yeah, that's something that we've kind of really, really tightened up on, because yeah, otherwise there's time wasted potentially on all sides, and that doesn't serve anyone. So yeah, I think it's about getting a faster answer, isn't it?
Any more questions? Hi.
I think there's a saying that in the corporate world, most brands now need to be media companies. Do media companies or production companies now need to think of themselves as brands, or, you know, think of themselves as technology companies almost? You know, if you look at NASDAQ, Netflix is almost thought of as a technology company rather than just a production company.
Well, it's traded as a technology company, right?
So do we need to diversify how we all define ourselves as our industries merge?
I think it's a great question. I mean, from our point of view, so we're a content production company. We're also a part technology company, and one of the reasons, again, I'm coming from the bottom up, not the top down, is that when a brand comes to us and they say, we need 1,500 assets, concept production delivered in 2 weeks, it still happens. You need a tool and infrastructure to deal with that. And so actually we found ourselves building this infrastructure that actually allows the brand to see everything that's going on. They're involved in the whole process. We're involved as a service partner as well. And actually with the rise of in-housing now, again, going back to the idea that every brand is trying to become a publisher, which they are, if you look at the in-housing trends, that technology is what we're finding is what they're looking for. So the answer is yes. I think in our instance, we're becoming more of a tech company. Seems weird, creative and tech have always been opposing forces, but who would have thought Netflix would be a technology company?
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Great.
To compliance, briefly, I think not in a great deal of detail. I would say there's obviously a bit different over here than in the States, and probably different now than it was 30, 40 years ago. Can you say a little bit more about compliance? And one other quick point I'm making, that is there always a danger of a downside? I think back to when the Bond film was mentioned for sponsorship, and that was fine. But actually, rather a lot of jokes were mentioned around with the rather clunky sponsorship. Now, that might be the clunkiness rather than the fact that there was sponsorship. But is there a danger of people reacting against it, particularly in dramas, probably less so in sport events, but in certain genres?
Are you going to?
All I was going to say is on the latter part of the question, I agree, you're definitely more suited for the former, but I think if Netflix went down a heavy-handed approach route with Heineken and Perrier like the Bond series did, I think their subscriber base would start dropping at a frightening rate. So I agree with you. I'm
not sure. I think there's a generation of viewers who are so used to seeing digital and social content when they understand the economies of a brand financing the content that it becomes less and less offensive. I mean, nobody wants something that feels uncomfortable. The brand doesn't want it, the platform doesn't want it, the producer doesn't want it. You need something that's organically interwoven into the IP, but at the same time, sometimes it can be really subtle, and sometimes it suits the content to be quite blatant and in your face. And James Bond, we expect to see that Aston Martin badge shining, and we expect to see a lingering shot on the cam, because that's part of the whole genre. And so I think it's about genre and platform defining context.
Yeah. I mean, we did so much, when I was at ITV, we did so much within the X Factor. If there is a constructed format, then almost you can go a little bit further with that brand integration. But I guess that's sort of the product placement and the role of the brand within it. Before product placement came in, obviously there needed to be editorial separation. Then when that went, then it changed to editorial justification, and then making sure it didn't feel like an ad or that was unduly prominent. So for the role of the brand within it, no alcohol, no gambling, no high in fat sort of sugar, that's kind of the product placement side of things. more broadly, in terms of just funding the content, obviously we, as a UK broadcaster, are governed by Ofcom and need to make sure that we're making it really clear to viewers that a brand has been involved. And the way that we do that, sort of the biggest amount of value that we give away, is the sponsorship of the programme itself. And that's why I was making the point previously that you can have an alcohol brand that may fund a programme. We have one that's coming shortly with the team, with Outline, that they're kind of working on, which is great. And an alcohol brand will fund the programme and the series, but because they're alcohol, they can't appear within it. So it will have to be a 0% variant or product that we'll be able to integrate. But let me know, keen to understand what exactly about the compliance side that you're looking to get.
I'm just thinking. I mean, there have been issues, and I think I may be thinking back before the rules were changed. But were products that went on certain daytime shows, and they did get into trouble with I think it was Ofcom then, simply for a product plugging because it was felt to be inappropriate. I mean, the other thing is, I mean, it's a problem if you do alcohol. Do you have problems? You know, particularly things you can't show programs before a certain time, and issues like that. I mean, does that cause problems? Alcohol, tobacco.
Sometimes, in terms of where we schedule it, I think needless to say, depending on the format, we have our compliance officers at Channel 4 who, on a case-by-case basis, will be looking at the brand's involvement, but also as well the genre of programme and how we sort of bring that to life. So yeah, and again, we guide all the way throughout and make sure that the brand is part of that, whether it's their sponsorship or whether it's the editorial and how far we can go.
John Nolan.
I'm going to be awkward.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and ask, as a devil's advocate, I don't know about you, but I'm not short of my choice of watching this evening. And I think there's quite a lot of content around today. In fact, I've got a backlog of series I've been told I have to watch. Do we need clients funding content?
I'd have an answer.
Go, Adam.
Eventually. How else will it be funded? At some point, there's going to be... Advertisers have been funding content for the past, 100 years? At some point, there's going to be a need where consumers don't want to watch those ads, that there's going to need to be brands funding the content. That's the answer. Yes, we will continue to need... What we're going to need, though, is clients brave enough to realize... to answer your question a little bit earlier, to not force the message of the brand into the content, but actually figure out an interesting way to get the message surrounding the content. Use the content, use the celebrity, use the narrative to fund other, to get your message out through other apertures. But you're right. My log of, there's too many streaming platforms for me to watch the content that's on any one of them. I have to be very selective about what I watch, but I know that there's going to be a moment where I don't care who funds it. If it's good and it's interesting and it's recommended, I'll watch it. I'll put it on my list, actually. I can't guarantee I'm going to watch it, but I'll put it on my list.
Well,
I think it's a little bit of a paradigm shift here, because you look at it from a media agency perspective. I look at it from a distribution perspective, and if we tend to look at it from a brand perspective as well, this is exactly where they want to go, because they churn so much in ad attention. I mean, and they churn so much in... It's so difficult to get involvement from their audiences, or target groups, because once you tend to produce content that people want to engage with, you turn them away from being a target group into being an audience. People who intensively choose to spend time with content made by a brand, build up brand loyalty. It may not affect immediately a call to action in, every time, but it will create brand love, it will create brand ambassadorship. So using it much more as a marketing tool and a communication tool, I think that's where it really will take off over the next few years.
And I assume you've watched White Lotus, John, and I assume you now want a Vespa, so it worked. Next question.
Hi, I do a similar job to Adam in the media agency world, or in the publicist, so very familiar with this debate, and 25 years of looking at AFP or branding for entertainment or whatever we call it. It's been around, but I've just come from Meta, actually, in a meeting where they're trying to push Reels, right? Because they know that TikTok's taking over the game in terms of short-form video as an entertainment channel, and they're shitting themselves because they see it as a new form of entertainment that doesn't require any social interaction, your friends and so on. It's dominating. The second thing, and John and I know this, and I'm sure Adam does, is the question, get me on Netflix, which has been around for so long, right? So that's what brands want. They want to be on Reels, TikTok, and Netflix as the long-form format and short-form formats. In terms of commissioning branded content, what's the panel's view on whether non-linear streamers is there anything different about commissioning and production in that model versus linear environments, or not? Is it just the same? I've got my own view, but I want to hear what your view is.
Is that a question for me?
Media man to media man.
Okay. I mean, you guys are the producer. I mean, I don't. Yeah, sure. Yeah, the audience is consuming it. It's like the better the quality, the better the experience. I mean, who cares where it is, right?
I think. Sorry. Yeah. What I was going to say. The interesting thing is that for us, that those TikToks and Reels, we can now get influencers who have built up their own audiences. We don't have to go through any agency, any production company, and that's the interesting thing for this audience is how, as a brand, we kind of go, okay, we can get an audience of X million for 10 grand just because they're doing TikToks, and all they have to do is put hashtag advertising, and that's all the compliance they need because of the freedom of that platform. So it's an interesting one to see. Certainly Netflix is obviously a longer proposition, but for us, we can get out to a new audience and they're listening to those influencers.
What do you think, Mark?
I think Amazon is very different from Netflix, who are very embryonic when it comes to the brand space. Some people are aware of Stranger Things and things like that. But in terms of actual fully funded by brands, it's much more young.
Yeah.
So that's the threat to linear broadcasters, and it's nascent, it's in the background. Don't worry yet, I'd say. But there's a long, healthy life in traditional broadcasting.
It'd be interesting to see as well, from a brand point of view, what's your attribution? So if you are funding the content, so the more traditional model that we run in terms of the sponsorship, and therefore the viewer is very clear about who's been involved, how do you achieve that?
Absolutely.
On the stream?
And shoulder content, which is briefly been discussed, but shoulder content is the most important thing to us. In terms of the brand, we let the producers, we let the broadcasters produce amazing content that is going to be watched anyway by the audience, regardless of what the brand thinks or says or does. Yeah. That's what we want, a linear audience. There's got to be subtle things to play with it. But then the shoulder content is the hard work and the hard sell and the brand. And that can run on our own channel, social, as you said. That balance has got to be the right balance.
Yeah, it has.
Piss off the audience. You know, production companies want to produce great content. Nobody wants to hear a story from a brand. I'm sorry, they don't. In the main, that's me. I've been doing this for 20 odd years. The way John and I have to tell people all the time, they're not interested in your risky story. They don't care where it came from, right?
And they don't want to see your CEO and their daughter. Yeah. Right. I think we've time for, oh gosh, we've got 3, 4, this guy here. Oh, this lady here.
Hi, Fran Cassidy. We've heard quite a lot about, or a little bit about, how branded content is being measured. But who is actually finding out whether it's effective for the brand? How is that being done, and who is doing it? Is a production company getting involved at all? Are you relying on the brand to do that, or are you involving research companies? I mean, whether it's working or not is going to be dependent on whether you get any more money.
Yeah, I mean, we both answered. I think from where I sit, we try to understand what the desired outcome is, right? Is it getting people to sign up for X? In which case, is it getting people to know more about it? If it's sign-ups, then great. Before we launched this show, what were the number of sign-ups? After it, what were the number of sign-ups? That's how you know if it worked. It's the same sort of metrics that you would have with a traditional television campaign. It's just there's no dynamic logic survey that goes along with it. You know what I mean? There's no pre-testing in the same sort of way.
But as Heather said, sometimes it's a longer consideration period after branded entertainment. You don't immediately go to buy. What about forced exposure? Has that any value to control groups or?
Well, I can add that the reason why we actually built this true streaming service for only branded content was a big part of it was to be able to give better stats and better metrics back to the brand. So once they tend to want to distribute their content on our platforms, they always get guarantees on viewership. Because I think that was, or we believe that was exactly what lacked. I mean, of course, we know something from television, we know something from social media, etc. But you can have tons of views on Facebook, but nobody ever actually saw your content, because a view is also a 1 second view. So the way we crossed it is we kind of built a new business model saying, well, you can get guarantees of viewership, which is a combination of views, the number of views, combined with the time that they spent with the content. So we cross it, and today this is actually where we go back to the brand and say, well, you have 25 million of minutes engaged with your content on our platform. We also use it to give feedback to the producers. So if we tend to see we have a piece of content that has a major potential, but they never really get into the story, it's kind of like, you need to recut it. You need to do a different start, because it's too slow, or because it's not engaging enough, or something like that. So we actually give the creative feedback to the production company and to the brand, because otherwise we don't deliver, because we have put our hands basically on the fire here, because we need to deliver both a number of views and also a certain time of engagement to the content. And I think this is where it can actually take off again. Like if you're sure you can get viewership to your content, probably much more brand would actually start to look into this.
Yeah, Fran, I was just going to say, I think for us, yes, outside of sort of the reach, the frequency, and all sort of probably the more established TV metrics, definitely with each of these campaigns, we will always run brand insight tracking, which is what was the impact felt by that viewer? Why do you think that that brand was involved? What was the takeout for you after you saw the editorial? I mean, that's really why Dulux came back for 2 series for Changing Rooms, and Ronseal came back for 2 series of The Great Garden Revolution. It's really important for us to be able to use that, to obviously encourage brands to kind of think of this as a new space, but also justify the investment that brands are already making into it. And obviously, as a broadcaster, we want to understand what that viewer is getting from that, and whether it's brand awareness. It depends on how far you're trying to push, that audience down the funnel. They might not go to an immediate call to action. It might just be more in terms of talkability, consideration, and things like that. But yeah, we make sure that that is baked into these packages, because we're just as keen to learn about that as much as anyone.
Right, one more question. Who's it going to be? I think your hand looked more determined than your hand. Sorry.
Yeah, I've got the pressure on me now, haven't I? I'm Stuart Robb from Medicine Television. We come from a live streaming and sort of Reels environment, so we're kind of stepping up. I was interested in the comments on Red Bull, because we look on that Red Bull experience as being a very good joined up experience between linear television and digital, and quite a holistic experience for users and clients. You said it was successful, which I think we could all agree, but you said you don't think it's going to carry on. I'm just interested why, if it's successful, you think it's not going to be if it's not carried on by Red Bull, it's not going to be picked up by someone else.
I don't remember saying it wasn't going to carry on. Either that's my age or my articulation. I think it will be carried on by Red Bull, so I'm going to contradict myself. I think it will be carried on by Red Bull. I think what I'm saying is that trying to emulate what Red Bull has done is going to be very difficult, because we started, it's a 35-year-old company. It started off as we had racing drivers, it was experiential stuff, it was magazines, then it was digital, then it was social, then it was TV, then it was film. So we kind of followed the development of content and distribution. But I think, so the Red Bull model is one which is going to be difficult to emulate. And Nike have tried it, Adidas have tried it. They've set up these media houses. And it's just going to be difficult for other brands to do it, because Red Bull have kind of gone...
It's interesting. I'm sorry to labour the point again, because I think you've got the connection between linear and digital in that sweet spot. And we've got Channel 4 here. Look, I'm just... It seems replicable. It seems replicable. And us looking at from the Reels and live streaming, building that cohesive package, where you've thought about what's going on in linear, where you've thought about what's going on in Reels, where you've thought about what's going on, and you've built the whole holistic package. Seems to be what Red Bull got right, and nobody else is doing, and I'm baffled as to why not.
I think it's because Red Bull, all our marketing, there was very, very little above-the-line marketing. There was some strange cartoons written by a guy in Hungary that would go on the TV, but everything else was about the lifestyle, and it was demonstrating the lifestyle through our content. So that's, and I think other companies are not going to be brave enough to put all their eggs in that particular basket.
Well, thank you, everybody. Please grab our panel. There are drinks afterwards, aren't there? And ask some more questions. And yeah, lovely to see everybody. And thank you for all your questions.